sejak kecil, karena salah satunya adalah faktor lingkungan, yang mana orang tua saya keduanya adalah guru. Ayah saya seorang guru SD dan ibu saya seorang guru pendidikan agama Islam di SD juga. Nah, disitulah mungkin salah satu alasan kenapa saya ingin menjadi seorang guru, motivasi saya untuk menjadi guru. Kemudian juga beberapa anggota keluarga saya, baik itu adik atau kakak dari ayah saya juga guru. Kemudian juga sedari kecil saya tinggal di lingkungan sekolah, yang mana orang tua saya tinggal di rumah dinas sekolah. Jadi lingkungan saya sangat berhubungan dengan sekolah, yaitu rumah dinas sekolah di dekat rumah itu. Terus juga setelah dewasa, mungkin seiring berjalannya waktu juga, akhirnya saya terinspirasi dari beberapa orang guru di sekolah, yang mana menjadi guru bukan hanya untuk mengajar di kelas, tapi juga bisa memberikan inspirasi kepada siswa. Selain kita mengajarkan ilmu atau berbagi tentang ilmu, kita juga harus menjadi role model di luar dari kelas. Jadi menurut saya motivasi saya menjadi guru adalah baik dari faktor internal maupun dari faktor eksternal. Seperti itu.
Perkenalkan, nama saya Rizky Pacawira Kusuma. Saya berasal dari Banjarmasin, Kalimantan Selatan, berdomisili di Bandung. Saya lulusan PGSD Penjas di Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. Kesibukan saya sekarang, saya sedang mengajar di salah satu sekolah di Jakarta Utara, di SDN Sunter Jaya 9. Karena saya termotivasi oleh guru olahraga saya sejak SD, SMP, dan SMA. Mereka menggunakan teknik mengajar yang berbeda-beda, sehingga membuat saya tertarik sekali menjadi guru olahraga. Dan almarhum ayah saya pun seorang guru militer, dan saat masih kecil pun saya bersama adik-adik saya selalu diajari oleh almarhum. Makanya menjadi dorongan sekali untuk saya menjadi seorang guru. Apalagi pesan terakhir almarhum saya, kalau kamu ingin menjadi seorang guru, kamu nggak boleh marah pada siswa kamu, karena itu akan menyakiti perasaan mereka dan teringat terus sampai dewasa. Kamu ajarilah baik-baik dengan teknik yang membuat mereka tertarik dengan cara mengajar kamu. Oleh karena itu, saat saya mendaftar SBMPTN tahun 2017 dan masuk jurusan olahraga, alhamdulillah saya lulus dan bisa berkuliah. Tetapi saat tahun 2020 muncul COVID-19 sehingga saya lulus KKN dan PPL yang menyebabkan KKN dan PPL itu online, yang menyebabkan saya belum merasakan menjadi guru yang sesungguhnya. Dan motivasi saya lagi ingin menjadi lebih baik lagi, seperti itu.
Nama saya Andi Nur Fauzia, asal daerah Pinrang, dan saat ini saya tinggal di Makassar. Adapun saya lulusan dari Universitas Negeri Makassar, jurusan Pendidikan Kimia. Dalam program profesi perjabatan ini saya mengambil prodi kimia. Alasan saya menjadi seorang guru atau motivasi saya pribadi menjadi seorang guru tidak lain karena guru itu merupakan pekerjaan yang sangat mulia, di mana kita bisa mentransfer ilmu kita kepada para peserta didik kita. Kemudian tentunya guru itu merupakan sebuah peran penting bagi masa depan generasi bangsa ke depannya, sehingga tentunya itu salah satu motivasi terbesar saya menjadi seorang guru.
Kenalkan, nama saya Muhammad Ahmad Jabrani. Saya dari daerah Sragen, Jawa Tengah. Asal universitas saya adalah Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta, dan jurusan yang saya ambil adalah pendidikan bahasa Indonesia. Saya di PPG ini mengambil prodi pendidikan bahasa Indonesia. Untuk motivasi dari saya, kenapa saya ingin jadi guru, yang pertama itu adalah dua faktor lingkungan seperti tadi. Ternyata dari keluarga saya banyak yang menjadi guru, baik dari Pak D, D ataupun bapak saya sekalian. Jadi itu tanpa tahu sudah terpengaruh ingin menjadi profesi seperti itu. Dan baik itu pun dari sekolah juga saya mempunyai guru-guru yang sangat memotivasi saya untuk menjadi guru. Seperti guru itu wawasannya sangat luas, jadi saya ingin seperti beliau-beliau sekalian, bagaimana cara mendidik anak-anak atau peserta didik itu agar menjadi peserta didik yang berkompeten dan kemudian berakhlak mulia. Jadi itu adalah alasan yang membuat saya ingin menjadi.
Pengalaman saya mengajar ini sudah sekitar 5 tahun ke belakang ya. Tentu saja salah satu alasan kenapa saya ingin mengikuti profesi pendidikan profesi perajabatan ini, karena seiring dengan perkembangan zaman, kemudian juga dengan pengalaman yang saya rasa masih kurang dalam dunia perkuliahan, sehingga menurut saya sangat ingin meningkatkannya. Agar apa? Agar proses pembelajaran dalam kelas kepada anak didik itu terasa semakin menarik, kemudian kreatif dan juga profesional. Maka saya sangat antusias untuk mengikuti PPG Prajabatan ini.
Motivasi saya ingin menjadi guru yang profesional dan belajar menjadi lebih baik lagi. Karena saya mengakui saya banyak belum tahunya, dan insya Allah jika saya lulus program PPG Pelajar ini, saya akan bersungguh-sungguh belajar lebih baik lagi, terutama bagaimana cara mengajar yang baik, menyelesaikan masalah yang terjadi di sekolah, dan paham bagaimana membuat administrasi yang baik dan benar.
Jadi salah satu motivasi saya yaitu karena saya sebagai seorang guru tentunya akan menyebarkan ilmu kepada peserta didik saya, sehingga saya harus menjadi seorang guru yang profesional. Nah, di mana guru yang profesional itu harus memiliki 4 kompetensi, yaitu kompetensi pedagogik, kompetensi kepribadian, sosial, dan kompetensi profesional. Nah, sehingga saya berharap nanti ketika saya terpilih atau lolos di program profesi pendidikan prajabatan ini, PPG Prajabatan ini, saya bisa menimba ilmu yang bisa saya terapkan ketika saya menjadi seorang guru nantinya, seperti itu.
Baik, alasan saya mengikuti PPG Prajab ini yang pertama itu adalah saya ingin belajar lagi menjadi guru yang lebih baik tentunya. Bagaimana saya untuk belajar menjadi guru yang profesional, dan sehingga nanti dalam saat mengajar saya dapat menyampaikan materi itu dengan baik, mudah dipahami, dan dapat menyelesaikan masalah-masalah yang ada di persekolahan itu dengan baik. Mungkin itu.
Menjadi guru adalah sesuatu yang mulia. Dengan menjadi guru, kamu bisa berbagi pengetahuan dan berbagi pengalaman. Mengikuti PPG Prajabatan merupakan salah satu wadah bagi guru agar bisa menambah pengetahuan hingga mengupgrade kemampuan dalam dunia pendidikan. Yuk jadi guru.
Jika kalian mempunyai panggilan hati untuk mengabdi kepada negeri, terutama ingin menjadi guru itu tidak mudah. Banyak orang di luar sana yang menyepelekan profesi seorang guru. Banyak tahapan juga yang harus dilalui menjadi seorang guru yang baik dan profesional dalam pekerjaannya. Intinya, kalian harus punya pendirian, bukan karena paksaan, karena apapun yang dipaksa hasilnya tidak akan selalu baik. Guru yang baik itu seperti lilin, ia akan menghabiskan dirinya sendiri untuk menerangi jalan bagi orang lain. Mungkin cukup sekian dari saya. Yuk jadi guru.
Ayo mari kita daftarkan diri kita di program profesi prajabatan yang merupakan salah satu gerbang utama kita menjadi seorang guru yang profesional. Yuk jadi guru.
Saya ingin mengajak teman-teman yang memang menyukai dan berminat untuk menjadi guru. Melalui program PPG ini, saya ingin mengajak teman-teman semua untuk menjadi guru yang tidak hanya guru yang biasa saja, tapi mengajak sehingga menjadi guru yang profesional dan kompeten, sehingga dapat menciptakan peserta didik ataupun generasi muda yang tangguh, berwibawa, kemudian memiliki karakter yang kuat sehingga dapat mengembangkan Indonesia. Yuk jadi guru.
Sorry baru dateng.
Gak apa-apa.
Udah lama ya?
Enggak. Apa ini?
Oh ini manfaat PPG Prajabatan Gelombang 2. Kamu udah tahu belum?
PPG Prajabatan itu apa?
PPG Prajabatan itu adalah pendidikan profesi guru yang diberikan kepada calon-calon guru selama 1 tahun yang bertujuan untuk menjadikan guru memiliki kompetensi unggul dan profesional yang berlandaskan nilai-nilai Pancasila.
Persyaratannya apa aja?
Persyaratannya lulusan S1 atau D4 dengan 18 bidang studi yang dibuka seperti bahasa Indonesia, bahasa Inggris, matematika, IPA, IPS, dunia konseling, dan bidang studi lainnya. Selain itu, IPK-nya juga minimal 3 dan usia tidak boleh lebih dari 32 tahun.
Cara daftarnya gimana?
Caranya,
yang pertama, cek linearitas kamu di laman ppg.kemdikbud.go.id. Setelah itu, pastikan data kelulusanmu sudah terdaftar di Pedagogy. Jika sudah, silakan pilih menu daftar PPG Prajabatan melalui aplikasi SIM PKB. Selanjutnya, isi biodata diri yang terdiri dari informasi umum, biodata kemahasiswaan, bidang PPG, pengalaman mengikuti pelatihan, pengalaman berorganisasi, pengalaman menjadi sukarelawan, pengalaman melatih atau mengembangkan orang lain, hobi, nomor kontak darurat, dan dokumen penting. Jika sudah, isi esai dengan jawaban terbaik versi kamu. Kemudian, lakukan pembayaran melalui beberapa fitur.
Oh, menarik ya. Kita daftar yuk.
Yuk, sudah saatnya kita sebagai generasi muda untuk berkontribusi di dunia pendidikan. Yuk jadi guru.
Seberapa penting peran seorang guru dalam menciptakan generasi penerus yang berkualitas, baik secara intelektual maupun budi pekerti?
Guru memiliki peran penting dalam membangun karakter seorang anak.
Guru memegang penuh tongkat estafet masa depan bangsa.
Guru dapat membimbing seorang anak untuk dapat meraih impian mereka.
Dengan pembelajaran berdiferensiasi, guru dapat membersamai anak untuk tumbuh dan berkembang sesuai dengan minat dan bakat mereka.
Dari seorang gurulah lahir dokter-dokter terbaik, akademisi tercerdas, seniman yang kreatif, dan profesi lain yang kompeten sesuai bidangnya. Lantas, apakah dengan peran tersebut menjadikan guru sebagai profesi yang berat dan tidak menyenangkan?
Tentu tidak. Guru justru memiliki pekerjaan yang lebih beragam serta dinamis.
Dengan menjadi guru, kita dapat menyalurkan kecintaan kita kepada anak.
Memiliki waktu yang fleksibel dan berkesempatan untuk mengeksplor diri dengan menciptakan pembelajaran yang aktif, kreatif, dan inovatif.
Selain itu, menjadi guru juga membuat kita berperan penting terhadap masa depan orang lain. Melalui PPG Prajabatan, menjadikan guru profesional yang menguasai kompetensi dasar guru, teknologi baru dalam pengajaran, pembelajaran yang berpusat pada siswa, berkomitmen menjadi teladan, dan pembelajar sepanjang hayat, serta dasar-dasar kepemimpinan.
Jadi, tunggu apa lagi? Segera daftar PPG Prajabatan. Yuk jadi guru.
Karena guru itu merupakan suatu pekerjaan yang paling mulia. Guru mengajarkan kita yang dulunya dari buta huruf sehingga bisa membaca seperti sekarang ini.
Alasan saya menjadi seorang guru adalah karena menjadi seorang guru adalah cita-cita saya sejak kecil. Menjadi seorang guru merupakan panggilan yang sangat mulia bagi saya. Karena guru memegang peran yang sangat penting dalam dunia pendidikan. Sehingga saya ingin menjadi seperti yang penting itu.
Alasan saya ingin menjadi seorang guru adalah karena guru adalah profesi yang mendasari lahirnya profesi-profesi yang lain yang tentunya ada di lingkungan pekerjaan. Karena dengan hadirnya guru, kita dapat mencerdaskan generasi muda di kemudian hari, serta guru adalah pekerjaan yang terus menoleh pahala sepanjang hayat.
Motivasi saya mengikuti PBG Prajabatan tahun 2022 ini yang pertama yaitu saya dapat mengembangkan diri untuk dapat menjadi guru yang profesional, berakhlak mulia, kreatif, dan inovatif.
Motivasi saya dalam mengikuti PPG Prajabatan 2022 karena saya ingin menjadi guru yang profesional dan lebih mengasah lebih dalam lagi untuk kemampuan saya dalam mengajar, mendidik, dan melatih peserta didik di kelas agar bisa menjadi masa depan generasi bangsa yang baik tentunya.
Itu saya ingin menjadi guru yang lebih profesional karena saya kan masih baru juga, jadi saya masih minim sekali terkait pendidikan di dunia faktanya gitu ya. Kan kalau kita kuliah sama jadi guru yang sesungguhnya belum tentu sama seperti itu. Ingatlah bahwa semua niat kita mengajar karena Allah gitu ya. Kemudian kita untuk mengikuti PPG guna sebagai kita memiliki sertifikasi bahwa kita adalah seorang guru gitu, guru yang profesional.
Kepada generasi muda saat ini untuk menjadi guru, karena menjadi guru adalah luar biasa, menjadi guru adalah keren.
Ajakan saya untuk generasi muda yang ingin menjadi guru, ayo segera daftarkan diri kalian dalam program PPG Prajabatan 2022 agar kalian bisa menjadi guru yang profesional, guru yang baik, dan dapat menjadi masa depan bagi bangsa dan negara kita. Ayo jadi guru.
Ayo jadi guru. Ayo jadi guru.
Ayo jadi guru.
Ayo jadi guru.
Ayo jadi guru. Ayo kita menjadi guru.
Ayo jadi guru.
Ayo menjadi guru.
Saya Din Wahyudin, salah seorang dosen Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. Kaitannya dengan program pendidikan profesi guru atau PPG, saya melihat bahwa program PPG ini merupakan salah satu program strategis dalam menyiapkan guru-guru profesional di pertengahan abad 21. Melalui program PPG diharapkan akan tampil guru generasi baru yang lebih profesional, yang lebih mendedikasikan waktunya untuk mendidik anak-anak bangsa agar lebih survive di pertengahan abad 21. Sukses PPG, sukses Indonesia.
Saya sebagai koordinator program studi pendidikan profesi guru untuk bidang studi guru kelas SD Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia mendukung sekali ya pelaksanaan program PPG, karena program PPG ini merupakan pintu gerbang pertama untuk menghasilkan guru yang profesional, mandiri, memiliki inisiatif dan mampu membangun budaya belajar kolaboratif. Harapan besar ke depan pendidikan profesi guru ini menghasilkan guru-guru yang benar kompeten, baik secara pengetahuan profesional, praktek pembelajaran profesional, dan pengembangan profesi, terutama menghasilkan guru yang berpanggilan jiwa. Mulialah dan maju bersama guru Indonesia.
Saya sebagai instruktur dari program studi PPG Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia sangat mendukung program pendidikan profesi guru, karena melalui program ini akan melahirkan guru-guru yang profesional, mandiri, dan berkarakter guru. Ayo guru-guru Indonesia yang hebat, ikut PPG.
Cek. Selamat pagi Bapak Ibu semua yang ada di ruang Zoom. Mohon izin, mungkin bisa di on cam dulu. Selamat pagi Bapak Sarkim dari tim pengembang PPG Prajab. Ada Pak Bu Andromeda dari Universitas Negeri Padang, Pak Darmawang dari Universitas Negeri Makassar. Selamat pagi semuanya. Ada Ibu Susilawati dari Sampurna University. Selamat pagi semuanya. Coba. Ngomongnya Pak. Selamat pagi Ibu Mima juga yang sudah ada di ruangan Zoom. Bu Mima, mungkin bisa di unmute dulu Bu. Mana ini Bu? Suaranya Ibu? Halo, selamat pagi. Oh, belum kedengeran.
Selamat pagi Bapak Sarkim dari tim pengembang PPG Prajab. Ada Pak? Enggak, saya kan cuma review apa yang udah terjadi ya. Dari Universitas Negeri Padang, Pak Darmawan dari Universitas Negeri Makassar. Selamat pagi semuanya. Ada Ibu Susilawati dari Selamat pagi semuanya. Dari mana tuh? Yang Bu Mima itu cuma di ruang ini? Enggak, di Zoom. Betul Pak, Mima. Selamat pagi Ibu Mima, apa kabar? Halo Ibu. Bagaimana kabarnya Bu? Coba cek suaranya Bu.
Sorry baru dateng.
Gak apa-apa.
Lebih lama ya?
Enggak. Apa ini?
Oh ini mantan PPG Prajabatan Gelombang 2. Kamu udah tahu belum?
PPG Prajabatan itu apa?
PPG Prajabatan itu adalah pendidikan profesi guru yang diberikan kepada calon-calon guru selama 1 tahun yang bertujuan untuk menjadikan guru memiliki kompetensi unggul dan profesional yang berlandaskan nilai-nilai Pancasila.
Persyaratannya apa aja?
Persyaratannya lulusan S1 atau D4 dengan 18 bidang studi yang dibuka seperti bahasa Indonesia, bahasa Inggris, matematika, IPA, IPS, dunia konseling, dan bidang studi lainnya. Selain itu, IPK-nya juga minimal 3 dan usia tidak boleh lebih dari 30 tahun.
Cara daftarnya gimana?
Caranya?
Yang pertama, cek linearitas kamu di laman ppg.kemdikbud.go.id. Setelah itu, pastikan data kelulusanmu sudah terdaftar di Pedidikti. Jika sudah, silakan pilih menu daftar PPG Prajabatan melalui aplikasi SIMPKB. Selanjutnya, isi biodata diri yang terdiri dari informasi umum, biodata kemahasiswaan, bidang PPG, pengalaman mengikuti pelatihan, pengalaman berorganisasi, pengalaman menjadi sukarelawan, pengalaman melatih atau mengembangkan orang lain, hobi, nomor kontak darurat, dan dokumen penting. Jika sudah, isi esai dengan jawaban terbaik versi kamu. Kemudian, lakukan pembayaran melalui beberapa fitur.
Oh menarik ya, kita daftar yuk.
Yuk, sudah saatnya kita sebagai generasi muda untuk berkontribusi di dunia pendidikan. Yuk jadi guru.
Selamat pagi Bapak Ibu, acara akan segera dimulai agar dapat segera bersiap-siap di tempat masing-masing. Baik, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Selamat datang di acara Seminar Pendidikan Guru 2022 dengan tema Perkembangan Transformasi Pendidikan Guru dalam Menyikapi Tantangan Pendidikan Pasca Pandemi. Perkenalkan saya Carter Bing Andika yang akan membantu acara pada pagi hari ini. Sebelum memulai acara, izinkan saya untuk mengucapkan selamat datang kepada yang terhormat Direktur Jenderal Pendidikan Anak Usia Dini, Pendidikan Dasar dan Pendidikan Menengah Kementerian Pendidikan, Kebudayaan, Riset dan Teknologi Republik Indonesia, Bapak Dr. Iwan Syahril, PhD. Lalu Pelaksana Tugas Direktur Pendidikan Profesi Guru Kementerian Pendidikan, Kebudayaan, Riset dan Teknologi Republik Indonesia, Bapak Temu Ismail, MSc. Lalu akan segera hadir bersama dengan kita juga Pelaksana Tugas Direktur Jenderal Guru dan Tenaga Kependidikan Kementerian Pendidikan, Kebudayaan, Riset dan Teknologi Republik Indonesia, Ibu Profesor Dr. Nunu Suryani, MPD. We would also like to deliver our warmest welcome to Professor Lin Payne, our Associate Dean of International Studies, Michigan State University. Also Prof. Dorinda Carter Andrews, Chair of Department Teacher Education, Michigan State University. Kami juga mengucapkan selamat datang kepada para rektor LPTK beserta dekan Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan, koordinator pendidikan profesi guru di LPTK, dan seluruh tamu undangan dan peserta seminar pendidikan guru 2022. Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, sebelum kita memulai seluruh rangkaian kegiatan seminar hari ini, mari kita menyanyikan lagu kebangsaan Indonesia Raya. Bapak dan Ibu dipersilakan untuk berdiri dan menyanyi bersama. Selanjutnya, saya mengajak Bapak Ibu semua untuk berdoa, memohon kepada Tuhan Yang Maha Esa untuk kelancaran acara kita pada pagi hari ini. Berdoa sesuai dengan agama dan kepercayaan masing-masing. Berdoa dimulai. Berdoa selesai. Bapak Ibu dipersilakan untuk kembali duduk di tempat masing-masing. Bapak dan Ibu, seminar pendidikan guru merupakan sebuah pertemuan yang menjadi kesempatan emas bagi kita, baik akademisi maupun praktisi pendidikan, untuk dapat belajar bersama dan membuka cakrawala wawasan penyelenggaraan pendidikan guru di ranah global. Dengan dimulainya masa pendidikan profesi guru di bulan Oktober 2022 ini, menandai bahwa semangat kita untuk meningkatkan kualitas calon guru sudah selaras dengan perkembangan yang ada di dunia. Acara ini diharapkan dapat memfasilitasi pembelajaran silang antara Michigan State University dengan LPTK penyelenggara PPG di Indonesia, memberikan wawasan baru tentang model penyelenggaraan pendidikan profesi guru, dan juga menambah jejaring untuk penguatan kualitas. Bapak Ibu dan tamu undangan yang hadir, sebelum kita masuk dalam sesi pertama kita pagi hari ini, mari kita mempersilakan Bapak Temu Ismail MSc mewakili Kementerian Pendidikan, Kebudayaan, Riset dan Teknologi untuk memberikan salam pembuka dan selamat datang. Kepada Bapak Temu Ismail kami persilahkan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan, Rahayu. Mohon izin Bapak sekalian, yang seharusnya acara pembuka dan sambutan awal disampaikan oleh PLT Direktur Jenderal Guru dan Tenaga Kependidikan, tetapi karena beliau masih dalam perjalanan, sehingga nanti beliau akan memberikan closing statement atau penutup pada agenda hari ini. Baik Bapak sekalian, towards distinguished guests, Prof. Lin Paina dan juga Prof. Dorinda Carter Andres, yang saya hormati Direktur Jenderal Pendidikan Anak Usia Dini, Pendidikan Dasar dan Menengah, Bapak Dr. Iwan Syarif PSD, yang saya hormati Bapak Ibu Direktur di lingkungan Dijen GTK maupun Bapak Ibu Direktur di lingkungan Dijen Dikti yang hadir pada saat hari ini, dan yang kami hormati Bapak Ibu alumni Bismarcking dari Michigan State University, dari beberapa LPTK yang hadir pada kesempatan hari ini, dan saya hormati Bapak Ibu Koordinator PPG dari beberapa LPTK yang hadir, dan Bapak Ibu pimpinan ketua perwakilan dari beberapa mitra pembangunan bidang pendidikan yang saya hormati, dan Bapak Ibu praktisi pendidikan yang hadir pada kesempatan hari ini yang saya hormati, dan tentunya rekan-rekan di lingkungan Direktorat Jenderal Guru dan Tenaga Pendidikan, khususnya di Direktorat Pendidikan Profesi Guru. Puji syukur kita panjatkan kehadirat Allah Tuhan Yang Maha Kuasa, berkat rahmat hidayahnya kita masih diberi nikmat sehat panjang umur, sehingga kita masih dapat melaksanakan aktivitas kita dan menghadiri seminar pendidikan guru pada pagi siang nanti. Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati, kami ucapkan selamat datang, welcome from Prof. Lin Paina, Prof. Dorinda Carter Andre, dan juga Miss Bella. Selamat datang di Indonesia, di Jakarta, dan tentunya kami berharap Ibu-ibu berkenan memberikan wacana pencerahan kepada kami keterkaitan dengan perkembangan transformasi pendidikan guru dalam menyikapi tantangan dunia di pasca pandemi. Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati, akibat dari pandemi COVID-19 yang hampir 3 tahun berjalan, tentunya ada beberapa perubahan dalam kultur kita, pembiasaan kita, dan juga tidak tertinggal keterkaitan dengan di dunia bidang pendidikan, yang mana keterkaitan dengan proses pembelajaran yang mungkin agak sedikit menyesuaikan, dan banyak sekali perubahan-perubahan yang harus disesuaikan sehingga proses pembelajaran tentunya bisa berjalan dengan baik. Dari beberapa hal yang terjadi tentunya perlu adanya suatu bentuk solusi sehingga layanan pembelajaran yang diharapkan dan yang dimintakan dari para peserta didik khususnya dapat dilaksanakan dengan baik dari Bapak Ibu guru tentunya, dan tentunya dengan Bapak Ibu pendidik yang lainnya. Nah, keterkaitan dengan hal tersebut, salah satu dalam solusi pemulihan pembelajaran di Kemendikbudristek telah dikembangkan terobosan beberapa kebijakan dalam Merdeka Belajar, yaitu terkait dengan program kurikulum Merdeka Belajar dan platform Merdeka Mengajar. Platform juga Merdeka Mengajar yang merupakan sarana fasilitas berbagai hal yang dikembangkan untuk bisa mendapatkan beberapa substansi, beberapa hal yang memang diperlukan dalam proses pembelajaran. Selain itu, Bapak Ibu sekalian yang kami hormati, guru juga memiliki peran yang sangat penting dalam pemulihan kritis pembelajaran yang terjadi selama pandemi. Tantangan pendidikan lainnya juga adanya beberapa isu terkait dengan adanya kekurangan guru, distribusi yang mungkin juga belum merata, kualifikasi pendidikan dari gurunya juga belum terstandar, dan juga masih ada beberapa guru yang belum memenuhi kompetensinya dan ketidaksesuaian antara kualifikasi akademik, sertifikasi pendidiknya dengan apa yang diampunya. Nah, hal ini tentunya perlu adanya suatu kebijakan sehingga Kemendikbudristek dengan transformasi penyelenggaraan program pendidikan profesi guru prajabatan khususnya dalam hal penyiapan calon-calon guru pemula yang profesional bisa diharapkan kedepannya terpenuhi baik secara kualitas maupun kuantitas. Dan kami berharap kedatangan dari Prof. Lin dan juga Prof. Dolinda dapat memberikan masukan, saran, pencerahan sehingga transformasi pendidikan melalui peningkatan kuantitas pendidik maupun kualitas pendidik dapat menghasilkan bentuk-bentuk yang inovasi, yang kreasi, sehingga apa yang diharapkan dalam proses pembelajaran dapat berjalan dengan baik, dan tentunya berharap kerjasama dari berbagai pihak dan khususnya dari MSU bisa kita bangun seterusnya secara berkelanjutan dalam hal peningkatan pendidikan di Indonesia. Dan kami mohon tentunya Bapak Dirjen PAUD Dasmen, Bapak Dr. Iwan Sahrir PSD juga berkenan untuk menyampaikan gagasan dan pandangan dalam menambah inspirasi dan juga pengetahuan dalam dunia pendidikan di Indonesia, khususnya dalam peningkatan kompetensi guru dan tenaga kependidikan. Akhir kata, izinkan saya membuka dengan mengucap Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Seizin Bapak Ibu dan juga kita menengadah rahmat dari Allah Tuhan Yang Maha Kuasa, seminar pendidikan guru yang bertajuk Teacher Education Transformation in Responding to Post-Pandemic Education Challenges dibuka secara resmi. Terima kasih, saya akhiri, kurang lebihnya mohon maaf. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saum, Santi Santi, Rahayu. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih kepada Pak Temu. Selanjutnya paparan dari para narasumber kita yang luar biasa hari ini akan dimoderasi oleh Ibu Murni Leo, MSID. Ibu Murni Leo, MSID adalah seorang profesional yang berkiprah pada bidang pendidikan dasar. Setelah beliau menyelesaikan pendidikan Master of Science in Education dari University of Pennsylvania, Amerika Serikat, saat ini beliau berkarir di Tanoto Foundation dan berfokus untuk mendukung berbagai inisiatif peningkatan kualitas pendidikan dasar di Indonesia. Selanjutnya kami persilakan kepada Ibu Murni Leo untuk memandu jalannya sesi seminar pada pagi hari ini.
Halo, selamat pagi semuanya. Yang terhormat semua tamu undangan, Bapak Iwan Syahril, good morning. Good morning to Professor Lin Payne and also Professor Deborah Andrews from the Michigan State University. Welcome to Indonesia. I hope you've been enjoying your time here. Yeah, so my name is Murni. I'm from Tanoto Foundation. It's really an honor for me to be moderating these sessions and sharing the panel with you. And hopefully I'll be able to do a good job. So the foundation has been doing a lot of great work in the improving education in Indonesia for the last 4 decades. And definitely one of our concern is definitely the quality of teachers and also the quality of learning. And we've been working very closely with Ministry of Education to actually how to work in a 25 districts in Indonesia trying to improve education. So really looking forward to moderate these discussions and see how we can improve the education in Indonesia together. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to Pak Iwan, and hopefully he can share a little bit about his great work in the past 3 or 4 years in the Ministry of Education and how we can move forward. Yes, please Pak.
Okay, thank you so much Bu Murni. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera buat kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan rahayu. Yang saya hormati Prof. Lin, Prof. Dorinda Carter Andrews, Pak Direktur PPG, Pak Direktur Guru Dikdas, Guru PAUD, Guru Dikmendiksus, semua tim dari PPG, Ibu Bella, ini ada dari USAID, Pak Martin, dari LPTK, para wakil rektor yang hadir di sini, koordinator PPG, tim PPG secara keseluruhan, ada dari tim pengembang, tentunya juga dari internal kementerian dan Bapak Ibu dari mitra pembangunan dan Bapak Ibu semua yang tidak bisa saya sebutkan satu persatu. Pertama-tama terima kasih sudah hadir pada kesempatan hari ini untuk kita sama-sama bisa belajar bersama, dan mudah-mudahan harapan saya bukan selesai saja sesinya di sini, tapi mudah-mudahan kita juga bisa saling melanjutkan silaturahmi nantinya. Karena menurut saya ini kesempatan yang luar biasa. Kenapa ini istimewa dan kenapa ini sebuah kesempatan yang baik? Karena Bapak Ibu, salah satu inti dari transformasi pendidikan kita itu adalah tentang guru. Ini adalah fondasi yang sangat utama dan pendidikan guru karena itu sangat penting. Dan di sini Prof. Lin dan Prof. Dorinda ini dari Michigan State University, dan Ibu Bapak mungkin yang sudah mengikuti sudah tahu, tapi saya sekali lagi ingin menyampaikan kenapa Michigan State University ini special, karena dalam bidang pendidikan guru, Michigan State University itu ranking 1 di Amerika selama 27 tahun berturut-turut sampai saat ini. Baik itu pendidikan guru, dasar dan menengah. Jadi itu expert terbaik yang ada untuk bidang pendidikan guru itu ada di Michigan State University. Baik dari riset-riset yang mereka lakukan, baik itu dari program-program yang mereka lakukan. Jadi saya mendorong bukan saja untuk sekedar kita belajar di sini, diskusi sama-sama, mudah-mudahan Bapak Ibu melanjutkan silaturahmi dengan Prof. Lin, dengan Prof. Dorinda sesudah acara ini. Karena itu menurut saya adalah investasi yang sangat baik untuk transformasi pendidikan guru kita di Indonesia. Mohon izin saya akan switch ke bahasa Inggris untuk selanjutnya. So what we're doing now in our policy in the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology is responding to the problem of learning crisis. So to put it simple, we have decades of issue of learning crisis in Indonesia. Yes, we have improved in terms of access, but in terms of the quality of learning, that is something like a major issue. So our goal in the ministry is basically to problem solve learning crisis. So therefore, focusing on students, centering on student learning. So this is like the hyper focus in all the major decisions that we do in the Ministry of Education, Research and Technology. So therefore, in terms of student learning, of course, the role of teachers is the most important thing. So the quality of teachers is important, and therefore, the quality of teacher education is very, very important. And we know that we need to transform our teacher education because a lot of issues that we need to deal together. What we're doing now in the current policy for transforming teacher education is to focus on the human resources. By the human resources here is in terms of the capacity of our teacher educators to deepen their expertise or to broaden their expertise in the areas that really, really need intervention. Like for instance, we know that that's why last year we went to MSU to study about how Michigan State University conducts the teacher education programs and how you're thinking about moving forward. And we have also delegations from going to Finland. I think some of the gentlemen or ladies and gentlemen from the universities here are from the delegation who went to also Finland last year. And we want to know about what's the most advanced knowledge in teacher education and where the field is going and where the thinking is going, so then we can not just playing catch up, but we can also leapfrog towards that direction as well. So in terms of transforming teacher education in Indonesia, a couple of things that I can mention. The first one, we decided to shift the focus to pre-service teacher education or teacher certification. I think it's been a long while. In 15 years, we hadn't done enough work in the pre-service teacher certification program. Only less than 30,000 teachers in 15 years, meaning a lot of new teachers coming to the profession without adequate preparation to become professional teachers. So the vision of the teacher education is how we can help the problem of quality and also tying with the supply and demand of new teachers. So how we address the problem of the demand of, let's say, we need certain number of elementary teachers, science teachers, math teachers, and then teacher education institutions can respond accordingly. And in terms of the decentralized also system, we are envisioning to have a self-sustained ecosystem in all regions. I give you an example that in special needs education, only 38% of the provinces in Indonesia that have universities with a major, at least one university in that province, with a program in special needs education. So therefore, a lot of provinces, they recruit teachers in special needs teachers are not from special needs study program. You can feel like how dangerous that can be, and not only to the inclusive schools, but also to the special needs schools. And the majority of the teachers are not from the special needs programs. And this is because the decentralized system, the planning, recruitment, and management is based on the local government's initiative. And this needs to change, so then how to tie or strengthen the university local government, central government, and school partnership for teacher supply and demand and teacher management. In terms of the curriculum of the teacher education, a lot of work that has been done. Some of the team are here. How we rethink about teacher education, we know that we need to update our knowledge and our skills. We need to have more practice-oriented curriculum in the teacher education. And the other part is strengthening the disposition towards student-centered learning. So disposition is very important. We believe that when a teacher has a strong disposition, the values towards students and their learning, they will become fantastic teachers. They will fight for their students no matter what. And this is the foundation of a good teacher. So we want our teacher education program also strengthening this value even stronger, because I think the challenges for the future, I think, will be even greater. At the same time, we know that we need to be more strategic in our investment in teacher education, especially in areas that we already identified is very pressing. Like, for instance, we need to focus on literacy and numeracy. So therefore, how our literacy programs and numeracy are also part of the foundation of our teacher education. We're thinking about, I think, literacy, a lot of like the problem of apprenticeship of observation in terms of literacy. A lot of experts, but perhaps they are not trained in literacy specifically, so therefore a lot of misconceptions might have happened, and that is something that counterproductive to our effort for literacy programs. Also, special needs that I mentioned is seriously lacking when we want to focus on students, and we know students have a lot of the variety of learning difficulties, that if the teachers are more generalists, maybe they cannot really see these difficulties in a way that is special needs teachers can identify it more better. And we're also thinking about hyper-focus on elementary teacher education. And the reason why, a lot of our elementary teachers are retiring. I think we can say about 70% of the, 60 to 70% of the retiring teachers are in elementary education. So therefore, replacing them with new teachers, I think we need to hyper-focus to make sure that the elementary teacher education is very strong. So therefore, it gives the foundation. If the elementary education is already really good, it gives the foundation for the later stage in our students' education journey. And the last that I want to mention is we want to push interdisciplinary kind of thinking. In our new curriculum, Curriculum Merdeka, or Emancipated Curriculum, the push for collaboration across subject areas using project-based learning that gives us the space for interdisciplinary kind of projects. That is maybe something that we need to learn more. So therefore, our teacher education program also needs to be strengthened in this area. I think the last part that I would like to mention here is that the principles of how we transform our education and teacher education requires at least 3 principles. The first one is having the growth mindset, meaning that no matter that how much that we know, that we think that it's already good, it's not good enough. Because the challenges will be greater, the challenges will be different. Our students are facing a much more disruptive era going forward. So therefore, everyone needs to have a growth mindset. So, and this is very fundamental in our teacher education transformation. The second one is the principle of Gotong Royong, or collaboration. So Gotong Royong is, maybe Prof. Lin and Prof. Dorinda is very unique to Indonesia. I think in G20, we introduced this concept, the philosophy from local wisdom of Indonesia, solidarity and partnership, and it has become part of the framework for transforming education in G20. The spirit of Gotong Royong is something that is common in all local cultures in Indonesia, which is basically you have the sense of empathy, but at the same time, social responsibility to solve problems together, solve the community problems together. And this is, I think, our principle in the transformation in education, including in teacher education. So first, growth mindset. The second one is Gotong Royong, or collaboration. And the third one is the tolerance for taking risks. I repeat, the tolerance for taking risk. It means that we give space for ourselves to try, to experiment new ideas. Something maybe that out of the box, something maybe is not maybe the norm at the moment, but maybe can become a potential solution to our problems. And the way to think about this, perhaps maybe one solution can address multiple problems at once. So this is something that we need to do to have a risk tolerance, meaning the ability to innovate, to experiment with new ideas, out-of-the-box ideas for our teacher education program. So again, with the Gotong Royong, with the growth mindset, and the risk tolerance, the ability to innovate, we hope that we can bring about better change in our teacher education, and we can focus, problem solve the problem of learning crisis, which is again the start, the beginning of why we decided to have this journey in Merdeka Belajar, in emancipated learning. So I think I'll end on that. Thank you so much for your attention. I'll come back to Bu Muri. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Pak Iwan, for sharing your thoughts. There are a lot of things that he shared, but I think a few things that caught my attention, right? The first is like how we put teachers as the core priority of like what we need to improve as part of the education transformations. We actually did a study, and we know that teachers actually the most important, the ultimate, the first drivers for the education's outcomes, right? They're so important. And a lot of the work that Ministry has been doing, I see that it's actually helping to solve today's challenges and also future challenges, right? So pre-service educations pre-service teacher educations, for example, is trying to solve the issues before the teacher actually goes into the systems, how we can prepare them for a workforce. And also, we also see that the decentralized systems, for example, trying to bring inclusive and equitable access to educations for all the students, despite of their background and everything. And also to focus on something that's essential, right? Literacy, numeracy, foundational skills. How can we equip our students for the building blocks for their futures, for their futures? I think it aligns very much with what Professor Payne and also Professor Andrew is doing with their work, right? Probably we can shift to Prof. Payne to share about in the maybe global context or in your work, how can we prepare our teachers for the current challenges, but also future challenges as well? Please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First, Pak Iwan, thank you. Thank all of you for coming. This is an incredibly exciting opportunity for me. I feel very honored as a teacher educator from one university in the United States to have had the opportunity to travel very far, to be with all of you, because I think we have shared concerns. So I think this is a very, for me, moving experience to recognize that even though our countries are physically very far away, we all recognize that we must transform our education systems for the future of our societies and for the welfare and future of our young people. And that really requires us as teacher educators, as government officials, as university leaders, as community organizers and foundations and partners to think differently about how we prepare teachers. So I suspect what I'm going to say today is nothing new. In some ways, I think my comments are not solutions. Really, we are together, I think, in global conversations, searching for new kinds of understandings, because we are not trying to repair a broken old system. We are really trying to think fresh. Not because we want to go back to something, but we have to think fresh because we have to have the future in mind. And it is about the future of our children, our young people, our communities, our societies, and the planet, which of course is in crisis. So today I have just a few remarks. I feel like Pat Iwan's comments have already previewed many of the things that I might say. First, I think it's important for us to recognize that teacher education has to change. And it has been trying to change for a very long time. But I think the efforts in Indonesia remind us that it is a momentous effort to change. It is not something that can be changed by small tinkering, by just a change of one course, one university changing, one new standard being set for teacher certification. It really requires an ecosystem to shift, and that's of course very difficult. I think that today, and the presence of Dorinda and Lynn on the podium with you reminds us that this really is a global moment. Each of our communities has to find our own solution. There is not an international standard solution, but we can be in dialogue and in conversation about ways we might find local new ways of thinking. And in particular, we are, as our arrival suggests, such an interconnected world right now. This mask is a reminder that we are interconnected. We are responsible for each other's welfare, and we also live in a world where national boundaries don't matter to a pandemic. That disease will spread. We've just, in my country, had devastating hurricanes and flooding that are the result, in part, of changes worldwide about how we use the planet and how we have damaged our climate. So I think there are many reminders that globally there have to be changes, and we have to rethink education so that our young people can be engaged in thinking not only locally, but thinking globally as well. And finally, I want to talk about the way COVID has both exposed and offered possibilities for our thinking about transforming teacher education and teaching. So let me briefly remind us about the need for teacher education to shift, my first point. I think, although I am not a scholar of Indonesian education, I'm pretty sure that in Indonesia, as in most countries, teacher education began as very much responding to local needs, creating the next generation in a community. And so teacher education historically has been very local and very much looking backwards and at the present. In recent decades in Indonesia, in the US, and around the world, we've often talked about teacher education building a nation. And so there's not only a local issue, but a national development issue. But today, as Indonesian leaders going to the UN General Assembly suggests, as MSU colleagues coming to Indonesia suggest, we are also at a moment where there are global conversations about teacher education, about transforming teaching, and the need for us to think about preparing not just people for local communities, but preparing young people to live in a globally interconnected world. So that's my first point. It is a world, as Pat Iwan said, that is fragile, that is vulnerable, filled with ambiguities, filled with dangerous, worrisome tensions. If we can't help young people learn to think differently, We worry about the future of our planet, the future of our able to live in peace. So the challenge for us as teacher educators or people influencing teacher education is more pressing than ever, and it is larger, I would say, than ever. Now, COVID exposed, like an X-ray machine, the fractures that were already in education. For example, the inequities in education that had long existed in my country, long existed in Indonesia. They weren't because of COVID, but COVID helped us see really serious problems. So we saw certainly the ways in which COVID challenged us in teacher education around bandwidth. Literally, how do we get our teacher education students when we can't be face-to-face? How do we help them learn? But also emotionally, for our teachers and our teacher educators who are exhausted. And in the US, I know that Dorinda can speak about this, we have teachers and teacher leaders and teacher educators who feel drained from the stresses of the new challenges that COVID and the pandemic have put on. So how to think about life beyond the pandemic moving forward is a very big challenge. We have a curriculum in crisis, a curriculum that may have focused on content areas and didn't think about the social learning, the emotional development of children. COVID reminded us of how crucial it is, and that is the work of all teachers, not just the teacher who is the coach or the counselor, but every teacher has to think about the emotional well-being, the social growth of the students in their care. COVID also reminded us the vital relationship of schools and families. We did not give enough attention, I think, in teacher education to what does it mean to really work not just with the students in your classroom, but with families. And how do we prepare our future teachers to understand families, to communicate with families, to recognize that they are educators and that they bring assets and strengths. So I think that COVID has exposed weaknesses, but it's also offered us possibilities. And I encourage you to look at a website that a colleague and friend of ours, Punya Mishra, created called Silver Linings Learning. He said, in the midst of the clouds of COVID, we also see some silver linings, and we see new possibilities, and we really want to think about those if we want to transform education. I've been fortunate the past couple of years to lead the OECD working group on the future of education and skills 2030 for conceptualizing a framework for future-oriented teaching and teacher education. In that work, although we represent many countries and we have youth voices, teacher educator voices, school leader voices, researcher voices, and government policy and foundation voices, it is very clear that what Pak Iwan has described in Indonesia, the focus on students has to come first. And any vision of teacher education has to start from students. But students gaining transformative competence. Pak Iwan used slightly different words than the OECD, but very similar. Helping students not just develop core foundational skills and knowledge and attitudes, but also the ability to create new value, to take responsibility in their own lives, in their communities, and for the planet. And to be able to reconcile tensions and dilemmas, to recognize that we are not always in agreement. We are not thinking all the same. But teachers have to figure out how to do that. In many ways, teachers have always had to have transformative competences. They've had to create new value, take responsibility, reconcile dilemmas and tensions, but how do they help young people do that? We think that this requires for teachers what we've called epistemic relations, new kinds of connections to knowledge, to disciplinary knowledge, and as Pak Iwan said, to interdisciplinary knowledge. But it also requires new kinds of relational knowledge, understanding students' families, understanding the school and community as an ecosystem. 3 things have stood out from our discussions that teacher education could address in its curriculum and pedagogy. So I won't speak about actual practices, but principles. 1, And these echo what Pa Iwan has said, developing teachers who bring a strength-based perspective. That sounds easy, but how do you help teachers see students as bringing strengths and not just either as blank slates or as deficient or lacking in something? How do you help teachers and young people who become teachers see families and communities as having strengths and learn how to bring those into the classroom, connect those to the curriculum, build the curriculum around that? How do you help teachers learn how to develop trust? And how do you help young people develop empathy? Now, there are different programs around the world that have worked very hard for these kind of soft skills that I think in Indonesia people talk about a lot, but much of our teacher education curriculum has not focused on that in the past. A second area is this risk-taking. We often, in higher education and teacher education, discourage risk. We want to learn how to succeed by playing by the rules. If we're going to help our young people think outside the box, teachers need to create opportunities for innovation, and they have to model the willingness to try and fail, to learn from failure, to experiment, to problem solve and problem solve collaboratively. How to help our young people in teacher education value that and not see that as too risky? How do we help our teacher education faculty members see that as valuable and not a problem is really challenging. And finally, we need to help future teachers, and I think COVID made this clear, recognize that they work not just in a classroom, but in a whole environment. How do they marshal the environmental resources of the school, of the community, of policies? So teachers become more than just learners with students, developing with students agency, but they have agency in the system. How do we help in teacher education future teachers develop that? How do we help future teachers help students learn to navigate an ecosystem that is not always fair, that is not treating all students the same? Those are real challenges today. I think it requires a very different curriculum of teacher education, and there's some very interesting models through the OECD work, and I want to point two in particular. One, a model in India that's really focused on helping teacher education students develop this growth mindset, 21st century thinking, by pushing them into an immersive problem-solving situation where there are real constraints and they have to deal with a problem. It's not a perfect environment, but it's real. That really forces them not only to develop the 4 C's of 21st century skill, but compassion, for example. That's very different. Another example that I want to highlight is the example of Denmark, thinking about this room and the resources in this room. The colleagues in Denmark have been for some time thinking about play and learning and the ways in which a different approach to education brings together those two. But for teacher educators to bring that view, they have to experience that. And so they are working towards a coalition of teacher education universities and government officials for imagining together, for daring to go for unpredictability. These are their slogans. And for insisting on meaningfulness that's play-oriented, bringing a playfulness to policy and curriculum planning, to model that and to help teacher educators see that. I think that COVID has helped us recognize there's not a single approach, but there's urgent need for change, and that we need a change that is wholesale and not tinkering, that recognizes the whole environment. And I think COVID reminds us we have to think forward, think towards the future, and not go backwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for sharing your thoughts. Wow, really learned a lot, right? Especially on how can we prepare our future generations for the tough competitions out there. As a young people, I really feel the competitions already, so I cannot imagine the lives for our children who are still in school right now. Couple of things. Actually, I really want to ask Pak Iwan's opinions on this, right? Because a lot of the things that you share is pretty much about like how we can change and shift teacher educations to prepare for what's coming in the future, which is like, you know, very agile, very dynamic, and we don't know what's coming. And in Asia in general, right, education has been pretty much focused on rote memorizations to pass exams. In Indonesia, especially, right, teachers are actually focused more about completing curriculums rather than nurturing a human being, rather than nurturing children. So, Pak Iwan, how is our policy right now actually aligned or support, right, the development of children in the future?
I think the focus on students and their learning, I think that is one of the key message in our policy. I think starting from our teacher professional development, teacher education, that is I think the key in the transformation of our teachers. I think we see this quite consistently. We try to convey this message. Of course, it's not like a day night right away. It's not same salabim then everything is beautiful. But I think we have made some progress, and I think those who are here, I think, have been also involved in this, especially in the programs such as Guru Penggerak, or the Master Teachers Program, or Sekolah Penggerak, and the PPG, either Prajabatan or Dalam Jabatan, that our goal is for helping our students to learn better and to create a supportive learning environment that is safe, that is inclusive, and push everyone to learn and share and collaborate.
Yeah, so student-centered learning. Yeah, I really like your word when you're visiting one of the districts in Indonesia. You're saying that, yeah, you need to focus on student, and student, which is like, I totally agree with that. Yeah, so can I move to Professor Andrews? Would you like to take the time to share with us your work and mostly about diversity and also inclusive access to quality education for all, right? Yep, here you go.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you for having us here, having me here. Pak Iwan, thank you for the invitation, as well as the other education officials. I want to begin by saying I entered the space with a lot of humility as a learner, as someone whose research primarily is centered in the U.S. context, right? So unlike Lynn, my research is not international. And yet I have a deep knowledge of the field of teacher education. I am a former primary and secondary teacher myself before I moved into the university setting. And so I bring that practice-based experience as well as the preparation of pre-service teachers and doctoral PhD students. So again, I just thank you for the opportunity to be here and to share what I would classify as some considerations for transforming teacher education here in Indonesia based on what we know in the field and based on what we've been doing at Michigan State University. Again, I want to underscore what Lynn said, that I do not come bringing answers, but again, really considerations based on the work we've been doing. So I hope you will take them as such and consider them in those ways for this local context. One of the things that I was thinking about in terms of framing, in terms of transforming teacher education in this COVID era, and I think about COVID as like ongoing, right? It's not as bad as it used to be, but we're not post-COVID yet. And I think the ways in which we understand the experiences that teachers are having and students and families and local communities, we get a sense that we are not quite post-COVID yet. But what COVID has required, in part, is for us to be very student-centered. As Pak Iwan was sharing the principles guiding some of your transformation, I was thinking about this notion of preparing the whole child, right? Which means more than just teaching them literacy and math and, history, but also what folks call these 21st century competencies, right? Which very much speak to social emotional learning, creativity, empathy, entrepreneurship, right? And I will say that in a U.S. context, these things have been hard to hold together. How does one both focus teacher education on content knowledge and also pedagogical content knowledge? Those are two different types of framing. How do you train teachers to very much know deeply literacy and math and science and be able to teach that to young people, and also have this pedagogical content knowledge to teach social emotional learning, empathy, cross-cultural competency? And so one of the things that we've been doing in our program is really using that guiding principle of the pedagogical content knowledge, right? What do we need to do in the curriculum to really prepare teachers to do not just the content piece, but also the soft skills piece? And so I'll share with you a couple of things that I think COVID has really challenged all of us to do as we think about transforming teacher education, that there's a role of technology to advance learning across cultural difference, right? While we had to move and shift learning from in-person to a virtual modality, and that was hard for teacher training, how was it also an opportunity? I don't think that we're going to be going back. So as you think about transforming teacher education in Indonesia, what is the role that online pedagogy might play in that certification process? There will likely probably be some hybrid modality, fully online modalities moving forward in certain families and certain communities. And so I don't think we can continue thinking that teaching young people or teaching future teachers will always occur face to face. So I want you to be thinking about that and the ways in which that presents an opportunity for learning across cultures, which, as a 21st century competency, we need young people to have cross-cultural skills. How do they work across and with, in the spirit of collaboration, people from various backgrounds in a global economy? I also want to bring up the notion of virtual professional learning communities. As we think about training pre-service teachers, how do we think about professional learning communities as both in-person but also virtual, with pre-service teachers in other communities, contexts, countries? So how do we begin to learn from one another, both locally but also globally, by capitalizing on virtual professional learning communities? Another thing that Pak Iwan kind of alluded to is what we call community-based teacher training, right? That if you are being student-centered, what better way to learn about the assets that students bring to the classroom other than having practice-based experiences in their communities, right? And that's community-based teacher training. So as you design your programs, how do you have elements that really allow pre-service teachers to have an experience across their time in local communities, learning what we call the funds of knowledge from those communities? They know best what they need, right, to advance. And so how do we design curriculum in teacher education that draws on the community strengths of those students who are in the classroom? So community-based teacher education becomes very important as well. I think, as Pakiwan said and Professor Lin, that COVID-19 has really required us to focus more on social-emotional learning. Again, thinking about growth mindset and a host of these skills that really help both teachers and students think about issues of equity. What does it mean to not just live in a society that's equitable, but to be one who is fighting for equity and justice? And how do you design teacher education curriculum that helps teachers understand issues of equity and justice and then teach those to young people? This has become very important in the United States and other places as you think about, democratic education, emancipated learning, those kinds of concepts. Let me talk a minute about curricula and where MSU has focused its efforts during the ongoing pandemic and as we think about redesigning our own programs. Our programs, particularly at the elementary level, have taken, I really appreciated Pakiwan sharing the principles that are guiding your redesign work, because those principles very much align with what we've been doing in the States. And that is really thinking about growth mindset, but in a lot of different ways. And this piece around collaboration, right? We are really focusing on the ecosystem of who is helping train teachers. So it's not just the teacher educators in the university, it's the mentor teacher at the local school. It's the field instructor who observes the pre-service teacher working in the school. So one consideration I would challenge you to think about is, how do you design curriculum with all of the educational stakeholders at the table? Not just the university people, but the mentor teacher, the principal. This connects to community partnerships, which we have really trying to be focused on, right? Not designing for a community, but designing with the community. That's very important if you are student-centered. And that really speaks to that deep collaboration where there's reciprocity. For pre-service teachers, it also models for them pedagogical content knowledge. How do I teach in a way where I see myself as a learner in that classroom with my students? I am both expert and learner, and my students are experts and learners. So there's a reciprocity and not this power hierarchy where teacher knows everything, student is there to learn. That's really important in being student-centered. The last thing that I will comment on is Pakiwan's principle around tolerance for taking risks. And I was thinking about that in relationship to thinking about issues of diversity, cultural diversity, teaching diversity and really thinking about how does your curriculum prepare pre-service teachers to understand the racial, ethnic, religious differences across the country and the ways in which those have value, right? In the United States, schools are so culturally and linguistically diverse that we can't prepare a teacher to just go into one setting. We have to prepare a teacher with the kind of dispositions to be able to teach in a multitude of communities, a multitude of settings. What aspects of your curriculum really prepare teachers to teach in multiple communities in Indonesia? That's really important, and that helps future teachers develop their own global competency, right? And then they can pass that on to students. So again, these are some considerations that were present before COVID, but COVID just illuminated them. I'll just say one more and then pass it back over. Thinking about the mental health challenges that young people, their communities, and teachers are facing. We cannot transform teacher education if we don't account for the ways in which COVID-19 has really illuminated trauma for many individuals, many communities, and many young people. And so as we move forward in this transformation, we actually need to incorporate into the curriculum what we call in the States trauma-informed pedagogy. How do we train teachers to look at that child or look for that child who's really struggling with mental health challenges, and so they can't learn literacy, they can't learn the math because there are other things going on. So I would encourage you to think about that as well, trauma-informed pedagogy and the ways we lift that up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Andrew. Two things that stood up to me, you know, how we can use technology to actually narrow the gap, not really widen the gap, right? How we can use technology to expose our teachers and students with what's going on out there globally, but also stick to their roots, right, locally, how they can still, you know, foster solidarity with their community. And second is like how we can develop as students holistically, right? Not only talking about numeracy and literacy, but also about like socio-emotionals, their mental health, the growth mindset, soft skill, and so on. So that's really very interesting. So for the interest of time, I think I would like to invite like a few questions from the audience, if that's okay. Yeah, Pak. So we have, I think, 1 and 2. 3, okay, that's it. So could we pass the mic? Yeah, probably can share your name and the institutions and also the question short and briefly. Thank you.
Terima kasih. Yang saya hormati Pak Iwan Syahril, Direktur Jenderal Pendidikan dan Usia Dini, Pendidikan Dasar dan Pendidikan Menengah. Yang saya hormati Pelaksana Tugas Direktur Jenderal Guru dan Tenaga Kependidikan. Yang saya hormati Prof. Lin dan Prof. Dorinda, izin saya dengan bahasa kami, bahasa Indonesia. Forum seminar yang saya muliakan, membaca dokumen yang dikeluarkan oleh OECD, The Future of Education 2030 Project. Saya membaca di sana bahwa tekanan proses pembelajaran adalah pada spirit kolaborasi, tapi juga tekanan pada literasi dan numerasi, termasuk literasi digital. Tapi ada satu poin penting yang saya catat untuk ke depan bagi siswa kita dan juga mungkin untuk pendidikan guru kita adalah faktor penting yang tidak boleh dilupakan, kesehatan mental, dan kesehatan fisik. Ketika Direktorat Jenderal GTK plotting guru-guru prajabatan gelombang 1 dan diberi peluang para mahasiswa memilih sesuai harapan mereka walaupun berbasis domisili, maka terjadi pergeseran-pergeseran sesuai harapan mereka. Apakah itu ada tanda-tanda bahwa sebetulnya mental para guru kita tidak siap untuk fight menjadi guru dimanapun mereka ditempatkan untuk belajar? Padahal mereka sudah dibiayai oleh pemerintah. Malah ada yang tadi percakapan dengan beberapa koordinator PPG, dibandingkan dengan biaya sendiri, mahasiswa PPG prajabatan yang biaya sendiri itu lebih fight dibandingkan dengan situasi yang walaupun kasuistik tapi sudah mulai kelihatan. Jadi tanggapannya bagaimana polisi ke depan oleh kementerian dan sebetulnya bagaimana juga hal ini, apakah mampu kita melalui profil pelajar Pancasila itu kita juga akan dorong ini. Pentingnya ke depan para siswa kita lah memiliki ketahanan mental, kesehatan fisik yang baik. Itu saja. Demikian, terima kasih.
Terima kasih Pak. Mau dijawab dulu atau kumpulin dulu Pak pertanyaannya? Ya. Kita jawab dulu ya pertanyaannya kali ya. Oh, dikumpulin dulu. We can collect the questions first. Ya, mungkin kita kumpulin dulu pertanyaannya. Yeah. So the question is like, how can the current policy and system actually helps to prepare teacher to be tough and to be agile and to be dynamic to face what's coming, right? That's basically the questions. Second questions.
Okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Adimas from Office Indonesia, development partner of Kemendikbudristek. Thank you very much for the interesting discussion. I'm interested with the explanation of Professor Dorinda about the equity and the social justice, because Indonesia consists of a lot of islands and then very diverse cultures, and then when teachers have the capacity to teach, sometimes they need to prepare where they want to teach. Sometimes they teach in the very rich area, in the city area, and sometimes they teach in the very rural and the remote area. But they learn in the university, but they will address different challenges. I want to ask about what are some skills and how to develop that kind of social and equity justice skills so they will be ready whatever they will be placed and they are not burned out after several years of being a teachers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Din Wahyudin from UPI, Indonesian University of Education in Bandung. I have already alumni of MFCU, only several days. Thank you very much. So this very simple, even it is a very limited time, but I have some very important point, both from Professor Lin Payne and from Carter's. The three things that it is very interesting and it is also our effort in Indonesia. First, how to focus our energy for student learning. It is also in line with what PPG have done today and the future, in order the future teachers is really prepare for student learning. That is one point. The second point, you have mentioned also, both of you, the importance of community. The community in general, yeah. It means also school environment, head teachers, and also parents and the others. It is also in line with our effort in our country. Let's say in the project of penguatan profil Pancasila, there is a very space of time for students to have to be able to communicate and learn from the community. That is one point. I think it is in line in Indonesia. But our question is, do you have any experiences, as you have mentioned, it is only considerations, yeah. Tapi the fact is, do you have any experiences how to collaborate strongly between community? Let's say in vocation school, we have also prepared for dunia industry. Industry community is different with parents, with local parents, but it is also need some strategy how to collaborate with them in order community in general can also participate for the future of teacher, for the future of student. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, so we have 3 questions, but pretty much wrote it on 2 big themes. The first one is like, how can we prepare teachers to be agile and dynamics and ready for change, both from the policy level and also outside policy? And the second questions would be on how can we encourage the participations of all partners and all agencies to support teachers, teacher education and learning for students, right? Yeah, so maybe want to start first? Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Thank you for those questions. They're wonderful questions. There's not enough time, of course, to respond thoughtfully to all of them. So first, this transforming the notion of teacher as an imparter of knowledge, and instead thinking of teacher as an agent of change, who is a partner with communities. That's a very big shift. And I think that people drawn to becoming teachers, some of them come with that aspiration, but many don't. They may come because they think teaching is good because they love children, or they've succeeded well in school and they feel schools are comfortable places. Many of the things that are in the questions you've asked raise this question about discomfort. And I think it connects with Dorinda's point. How do we begin in teacher education systems, in teacher education programs, and for future teachers to go beyond the comfortable? How do we help people think about being resilient learners and partners? It means it's not becoming the expert. It's being willing to engage in collaboration, in exploration, and in learning. And I think we have to model that at every stage in teacher education. I think we have to recruit candidates to teacher education who know that that is part of what being a teacher involves. We find often that we have people who come to teacher education with a very different expectation, and they need to be challenged early. Dorinda can speak more, but in our program, we have very challenging courses in the very early semesters that push the students beyond their comfort. We also know, thinking about connecting with partners and building collaborations and learning in community, 18-year-olds don't necessarily come with that training. They have to learn how to do that. And in the US, we have many examples of bad teacher education community experiences where we send our students in the community and they develop the opposite insights we would hope they would learn. They come away blaming the parents They think a community doesn't care. We want to challenge that view. So I think teacher education's struggle is to always push itself and push all the participants. Teacher educators, our collaborators in the field, in schools, and especially our future teachers to really rethink. But I just want to say that in the OECD discussions, we also say this requires an attention to well-being. We can't ask people to go outside their comfort zone if we don't also think about their support for that. So we don't want to, as we rethink teaching and rethink teacher education, it is not only about teacher competence, it is about teacher well-being and teacher agency. And how do we, in teacher education, support all of those things? I'll stop here because I know Dorinda has better examples.
Not better examples, but just additional ones. One of the things I wanted to add to what Lynn was saying is teacher as a facilitator of knowledge and knowledge construction, right? So thinking about teachers not just as imparters of knowledge, but also facilitating student learning and co-constructing knowledge with them. Somebody raised the question of, what should, I think, teachers be learning? What should students be learning? And I wrote down, what do you want them to learn? And what you want them to learn may be slightly different from what communities want them to learn. And so as you think about partnership, how do you listen to, first of all, how do you think about, as Pakiwan was lifting up, guiding principles for teacher education, but also listening from community members about what they think future teachers should be learning. That is very difficult. We have struggled in the United States to not just be the big power source saying this is what teachers should learn, but also trying to listen to communities about what they hope teachers learn to best teach their children. So it's both. And that is difficult work. There's no one formula to that. But it does require dialogue with community leaders and also deciding kind of at a national level or a provincial level, what are the things, the guiding principles that you think teachers, future teachers need to learn? So it's it's pairing the local or the micro with the macro, and they both have to coexist, and that's not easy. I was thinking about this question raised around, social justice and equity. As Lynn said, we don't shy. Early on, like one of their first courses, we want future teachers to examine issues of power, issues of privilege, issues of difference, right? How do we look at frameworks around power, difference, inequality? So we present that to them early on and have discussions so that as they go into different communities, they can come back in the college classroom and be talking through some of the discomfort, some of the stereotypes that they may be generating in their own mind. So I would say part of your curriculum, you might want to consider, how do we lift up those frameworks of inequity, injustice very early so that teachers are exposed and can keep talking through those along the way. Oh, yes.
Let me add an example that builds on this from Michigan State. Often our future teachers, when they come to our teacher education program, they want to go to schools and they want to learn how to teach math, how to help a child learn to read. So it's very frustrating for them in their first semester as first-year students We say, you're going to communities. You're not going to teach a kid to read. You're not going to learn how to be a math teacher. You need to understand the community, and you need to understand these broader processes and structures that are influencing how kids learn to read, what kids are expected to know, how we set up schools the way we do. But in many ways, our students might be quite resistant at the beginning because they want to think of teaching as how to teach techniques, and they think it's about content. If we want to think about teaching students, they need to learn how to understand a student as a whole person, not as only someone learning to read. So even when we start in schools, often we're asking our students not just to look at the reading in the school, but to understand that child out of the classroom, or that child at a different moment in the school day, or to understand the school and its community. So I think we have to work against a traditional approach of helping teachers learn how to do something. If we rethink teaching as about student focus, and students are not a combination of subject matters. They are really about making sense, belonging, not belonging. We need our students to understand that, and they need to reflect on their own experience of that as well. And so we do a great deal of work asking people to reflect on their own sort of pedagogical autobiography. How did they feel included in the classroom? At what point did they feel marginal or excluded? What made that happen, and how did that affect their learning? So issues, again, of community outside the classroom and community as it's created in the classroom are things we want our students to think about early, and not only or first about techniques of teaching.
This piece around critical self-reflection is very important, right? So if I grew up in a community that was very privileged, I went to what would be considered a good school, and now I want to become a teacher, there's some stereotypes and assumptions I might have about schools and communities that weren't like mine. And so an early activity for our students isn't even to go into a school. Let's do what we call community asset mapping. Let's just go into the community. What are the rich assets of that community? Or that city? Or that region? How do we understand in one community there's a more economically privileged area and yet another economically impoverished area? And then we want them to think through that and think about their own schooling experiences, right? So that's an example of an activity before they even go into a school building. Let's just do some community understanding and then critically self-reflect on those experiences.
I think that also has the potential to address the issue that I think you raised. How is it that teachers often self-select? Oh, I don't want to go to that school. I want to go to this school. And I think at Michigan State we have a couple different ways we address that. First, because of this critical self-reflection, we have many future teachers who begin to realize, oh, I actually really want to rethink. I have been imagining myself teaching children just like me, but now I realize I actually want to be a different kind of teacher. And so there's a way in which we hope to inspire our teachers to recognize that in a multicultural society, a society of great inequalities, there's a role for teachers to go beyond their narrow experience, because we want our children to be able to go beyond whatever limitations in their particular experience. So that's one piece. Another structural piece that our program has attempted with a good goal, it's hard, is to have a cohort program where we recruit students who say, I want to teach. In the US, for example, urban schools are often viewed as schools that have lower resources. They've suffered decades of harm from economic and political and social inequity. And so we want to recruit teachers not just to say, I want to work in an urban school, but what do you need to learn about the assets of a community? What do you need to learn about partnering in a community? And if students enter this cohort, they're not getting just a general teacher education program, they're getting community experiences and field experiences that are going to push them to think about what does it mean to be in the US in an urban school setting. We have another cohort program that we call the Global Cohort Program, which is to help teachers who want to think about the global diversity that we even have in our small town in Lansing, Michigan, where in one school we might have 20 languages spoken because children are coming from many different backgrounds. So again, what can we do in how we choose where our students are doing their field placements, where they're doing their community engagement, what analytic tools they need to understand the importance of language in learning, and the skills teachers need to work in multi-language classrooms. So both of those programs are attempts to say, we don't want teachers to just get to go to their hometowns. We want teachers to go beyond that. But it's very hard. We still have a lot of teachers who would like to go back to the comfortable place they know.
Okay, thank you for sharing a very concrete examples of like how it works in the American context. And I think I can summarize like how we, all the actors here in around teacher education can intentionally design programs that actually helps to nurture the teacher that we want, right? And during that process, of course, like involve the community and how we can, you know, create an environment where, you know, it is possible for it to be participatory and participative so that we get all the voice from the ground and those people involved. Okay, I think we come to the end, right? But before that, you know, like today we discussed a lot of things, right? Starting from the hard skill, we talk also about the soft skills. We talk about like how to prepare teachers. We talk about partnership and collaborations. It's a $1 million questions, right? In a short, if we are to move forward, right? If we have only $1 million, right? Where do you think we should start? I think that's how we can close that. Pak Iwan. I think from each and every one of you just share like one short sentence, like where should we start, right?
We should start from ourselves. The change comes first from ourselves and then transfer to our groups and hopefully to our communities. I just want to maybe, this is related, but I frame it in a different way. In the student-centered philosophy, I think, at least for me, we should avoid blaming the students. And this is the same as if we are teacher educators, we should think about what we can do to help the students reach to where they can be. So if that is for me as an indicator, if we still put the blame on the students, or the students are lazy, the students are this, the students are that, it means we are not framing our work in a student-centered mindset. So there is a saying from John Foster Kennedy, JFK, ask not what your countries can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. I phrase it, ask not what your students can do for you, but ask what you can do to help the students, right? So, and in the context of teacher education, I think our homework together, all the stakeholders, for the next generation of teachers, we should ask what we can do to help our future teachers have this kind of growth mindset, resilience, and to help them to face a lot of challenges beyond the comfort zone, understanding their community that may be different from them, and feel compelled, feel like, yes, I want to do that. How can we help our student teachers see that? How can we help our student teachers do that? can we do a better job? I think we have done to some extent, but I think we can do much better than that. And this is another problem solving that we can do together. And I know, I think the teacher education institutions here come from different places, and we have also like the school teachers and practitioners, the school leaders, and the policymakers and development partners. How can we help this? How can we strengthen the disposition for our students that, yes, I want to become a teacher, and I want to become a teacher to help something that bigger than myself. So this is a spirit of a movement, because Merdeka Belajar, emancipated learning, is not just about program or policy. It is about a movement. So if we can think about this together, I think we can make a huge progress going forward. And I believe we can do this because I can see the spirit of collaboration. This is the reason why we have achieved some progress with Merdeka Belajar. We have a lot more work to do, but it is already happening. So hopefully, in that spirit, the student-centered philosophy, we think more about what we can do to help our student teachers to be the kind of future teachers that they can be. So if they haven't come to that point yet, it means that we haven't done our work good enough. So we need to rethink together. And with that spirit, I think on that note, let's do problem solving together for a lot of problems, including in our pre-service teacher education, a lot of homework that we still need to do. We just started the new version of the PPG Prajabatan, the pre-service certification this year, but it's just the beginning. This is going to be a long journey, Ibu Bapak. And let's do the journey together. Let's strengthen each other. We need each other for helping to transform our teacher education for the future of the planet, not only the current one, but the future of our children, the future of our planet, which will be different than us. The challenges will be different. And the challenges will be even more disruptive than now. So this is what we can do, I think, together, and then hopefully with this spirit of Gotong Royong, we can make a leapfrog, melakukan lompatan, instead of just playing catch up. I think Indonesia can do this, and of course, we need to continue from a lot of global context to give us inspirations for this. Let's learn together, let's collaborate and share with each other and continue to strengthen. No matter where we are now, we need to continue learning, and it's going to be endless. Thank you so much.
Okay, I think that's the final and closing statement from Pak Dirjen. Okay, so thank you so much for the panelists to be here today and share your knowledge and your ideas, visions with us today. And thank you so much for all the audience as well for being such an attentive audience and really listen, and hopefully we gained a lot of knowledge today. So with that, I am passing down the mic to the MC, and thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Terima kasih Ibu Murni Leo dan para narasumber. Thank you Prof. Lin, Professor Dorinda, and Pak Iwan for the great discussion. Kami percaya bahwa para peserta bisa memetik pelajaran berharga, perspektif yang baru dari diskusi ini tentang bagaimana pentingnya seorang guru yang berkualitas dan profesional dapat memajukan pendidikan Indonesia dan mempersiapkan generasi penerus bangsa. Sebagai penutup acara seminar guru pada hari ini, kami mau mengundang yang sudah bersama dengan kita Ibu Profesor Dr. Nunuk Suryani MPD selaku PLT Dirjen GTK Kemendikbudristek untuk menyampaikan closing statement. Kepada Prof. Nunuk kami persilahkan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan, Rahayu. To our distinguished guest, Associate Dean for International Studies, Michigan State University, Prof. Lin, Chair of Department of Teacher Education, Michigan State University, Prof. Dorinda, Pak Iwan, Honorable Directorate General of Early Childhood Education, Primary Education and Secondary Education, Pak Iwan, all directors within Teacher and Education Personnel Directorate, Pak Yas, Pak Rahmadi, Bu Santi, all directors within Higher Education Directorate, respectable coordinators of Teacher Professional Education Program from Teacher Education Universities, development partner, educational practitioners, coordinator and sub-coordinator in the Directorate General of Teacher and Educational Personnel. First, I would like to thank you all for participating in our teacher education seminar. This activity is one of the ways to build a network of sustainable cooperation between universities, the United States government, and the government of the Republic of Indonesia. I believe that your willingness to attend and participate in this seminar is a form of support for the education transformation in Indonesia. The Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology put a comprehensive effort into mitigating learning loss through Curriculum Merdeka, or an emancipated curriculum. This curriculum focuses on the student as a center for teaching and learning. We also highlighted several important aspects to pay attention to during and after the COVID-19 pandemics, such as access to technology, digital literacy, and other innovation related to teaching and learning processes. Regardless of the condition, students must receive a proper education. We have worked together to improve the quality of national education through Curriculum Merdeka and Merdeka Pengajar platform and other initiatives. We are very thankful for Pak Iwan, Prof. Lin, and Prof. Dorinda's remark and presentation that highlight the need to improve the quality of teacher and preparation program. I hope the seminar will be one of the important milestone to enhance the U.S. and Indonesian collaboration in the transformation of teacher education. We have our priority program to increase the competence of PPG lecturer through doctoral scholarship, micro-credential, and visiting scholars in cooperation with overseas teacher education universities. To our distinguished guests from Michigan State University, we are pleased to welcome you to Indonesia. I would like to thank you for your warm welcome during our previous visit to MSU for benchmarking purposes. The benchmarking is an important effort for LPTK, or Teacher Education University of Providers of Professional Teacher Education, and the Directorate General of Teacher and Education Personnel as policymaker to develop a program to facilitate professional teachers. Finally, we hope to develop sustainable collaboration between MSU, the Directorate General of Teacher and Educational Personnel, and other stakeholders to improve teachers' competency through several initiatives. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom. Om Santi, Santi, Santi Om.
Ya, terima kasih Profesor Nunu atas closing statement-nya. Kita sudah berada di penghujung acara kita pagi siang hari ini. Jadi kami mempersilahkan kepada Bapak Temu Ismail, Profesor Lin, Profesor Dorinda, Bapak Iwan Syahril, Prof Nunu dan Ibu Murnila untuk ada di depan bersama-sama untuk sesi foto bersama dan penyerahan token of appreciation. Lalu yang selanjutnya kami mohon bantuan Bapak Iwan Syahril untuk memberikan token of appreciation kepada Profesor Dorinda. Sudah. Baik, para hadirin, dengan ini berakhirlah sudah seluruh rangkaian acara seminar kita pada pagi siang hari ini. Terima kasih kami haturkan kepada segenap para tamu undangan dan hadirin yang terhormat. Semoga seminar hari ini dapat memberikan wawasan baru dan semangat dalam mencetak guru profesional untuk pendidikan Indonesia yang lebih baik. Saya Carter Bianika undur diri, sampai jumpa di kesempatan berikutnya. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oh. Kita mari semuanya ke depan, kita lakukan foto bersama-sama, semua peserta juga. Mari berkumpul di depan. Para Bapak Ibu, mari berkumpul di depan untuk melakukan sesi foto bersama. Cek. Cek, cek, cek. Cek, 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 cek. Cek, cek. Cek, cek, cek. Cek, cek, cek. Cek, cek, cek. Cek. Cek, cek. Cek. Cek, cek, cek. Cek, cek.
Cek, cek, cek.
Cek satu.
Cek. Mohon izin Bapak Ibu untuk bisa ke podium semua. Para koordinator LPTK dan juga mitra pembangunan silahkan. Mohon izin Bapak Ibu silahkan ke depan untuk bisa berfoto bersama dulu. Sekali lagi Bapak Ibu mohon izin untuk bisa merapat ke depan semuanya untuk bisa berfoto bersama dulu, silahkan. Silakan para koordinator LPTK, para wakil rektor. Silahkan pakai masker dulu. Buka masker, silahkan. Oke, gaya formal dulu Bapak Ibu. Formal dulu. Mohon izin. Oke, gaya bebas. 1, 2, 3. Satu kali lagi. Oke. Baik, Bapak Ibu, mohon izin untuk bisa tetap di sini ya Ibu, Bapak Ibu. Jangan kemana-mana karena kita nanti akan kembali ke Hotel Millennium. Sekali lagi Bapak Ibu mohon izin untuk tidak meninggalkan ruangan ini karena kita akan bersama-sama kembali ke Hotel Millennium. Cek, Bapak Ibu silakan ada snack di depan, silakan bisa menikmati khas Indonesia. Silakan Bapak Ibu, ada snack khas dari Indonesia.